I didn't expect the first sound in the Marlowe mansion to be laughter, not the easy kind, not the kind that bounces off walls and forgets itself. This laughter was thin and startled, like it had been locked inside a drawer for months, and someone had finally found the key. Ethan Marlowe stood at the end of the west hallway, with his hands braced against the dark wood paneling, as if the mansion itself were the only thing keeping him upright. The portraits along that corridor watched him with a quiet, oil-painted patience, generations of Marlowes rendered in expensive brushstrokes, all of them sure of their place in the world. Ethan had never looked less sure. I'm Carlos Vieira, and I tell stories for a living. Stories about people who have everything and the strange ways they still manage to lose themselves. When I was asked to document Ethan's family transition, I assumed I'd find a billionaire solving grief with money, like they all do. What I didn't expect was to witness a man fall apart because of something as simple as a dining room door opening for the first time in a year. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Rewind to the first morning I stepped through the Marlowe gates. The driveway curved like a ribbon through manicured hedges and winter roses. Stone statues guarded the path. Their fountain breathed quietly, even in the cold, and somewhere beyond the glass and limestone the mansion rose like a patient animal, alive in its own way, full of lungs and corridors and secrets. Inside, warmth hit me first. Not emotional warmth, actual heat that smelled like cedar, polished floors, and the faintest trace of Elena Marlowe's perfume, the kind that clung to velvet curtains long after the woman who wore it was gone. Elena had been the heart of this house. Everyone told me that in different ways. The head housekeeper said it while straightening a silver tray. The gardener said it while trimming the bare vines in the greenhouse. Even the security chief said it, quietly, as if admitting it were a breach in protocol. And Ethan proved it without saying a word. He moved through the mansion like a man living in a museum of his own loss. Up at dawn, coffee untouched, suit immaculate, eyes hollow. Every morning he visited the twins' wing, stood outside their door for 10 seconds, then walked away as if the air inside might shatter him. Noah and Lucas Marlowe were 9. They were twins, and they shared a diagnosis, but they were not the same story. Noah was quiet the way a candle is quiet, still burning, still watching, still translating the world into something only he could see. He carried a sketchbook almost everywhere, and when people spoke too loudly or too fast, his eyes would drift to corners and patterns and tiny details. He didn't disappear. He observed, and his hands, when he felt safe, would move, drawing, folding paper, shaping a thought into something real. Lucas was the opposite kind of brave. He filled rooms with his feelings. He hugged like he was trying to stitch people back together. He laughed with his whole body, and when he cried it came openly, honestly, like rain that didn't apologize for falling. He called most adults by whatever name he decided fit them. He called Ethan Dad in a way that sounded like both a question and a prayer. The twins' wing sat on the second floor, separated from the rest of the home by a wide archway and a hallway that smelled faintly of lavender and fresh laundry. Their rooms were bright, intentionally so. Soft lamps, pale walls, sensory-friendly textures. There was a playroom with a low shelf of puzzles and weighted blankets, a therapy corner with a swing and tactile boards, a small art studio with paper stacked neatly like it mattered. It all looked perfect. It all felt quiet. Not quiet like peace. Quiet like people were holding their breath. That's because the Marlowe Family Trust was counting days. 14 to be exact. 2 weeks until a private guardianship review that would decide whether Ethan remained the legal guardian of his sons, or whether the trust, an institutional machine wrapped in polite language, would step in for the twins' best interests. They weren't calling Ethan abusive, they were too smart for that. They were calling him unstable, grief-impaired, emotionally absent, a brilliant provider, yes, but not a present father. And the worst part? They had evidence. The nanny logs. The missed therapy sessions. The silent meals. The locked dining room. That dining room mattered more than anyone outside the house could understand. It had been Elena's kingdom. Sunday pancakes, music playing low. The twins coloring at the long table, while Elena danced barefoot across the rug like joy was a habit. After Elena died, Ethan had shut the doors as if he could seal the past inside and keep it from leaking into his present. He told the staff never to open it, so they didn't. And a room meant for togetherness became a monument to absence. On my second day in the mansion, A new hire arrived. Brenda Anderson, 29, no prestigious pedigree, no polished resume. She wore a simple coat, her hair pulled back, her eyes steady. She carried one duffel bag and a folder of references that looked worn, like it had been opened and closed too many times. Mrs. Hargrove, the head housekeeper, met her at the staff entrance. "You're here for the caregiver position?" "Yes," Brenda said. Mrs. Hargrove hesitated, voice dropping. "Trained specialists don't last long here. The trust watches everything. The staff walks on eggshells. And the man of the house, he doesn't want to be saved." Brenda's gaze didn't flinch. "I'm not here to save him." Mrs. Hargrove looked her over. "Then why are you here?" Brenda's fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. "Because two boys live in a house full of adults who are afraid to love them out loud." That answer landed like a soft slap. Ethan met Brenda that afternoon in his office, an enormous room with a wall of glass overlooking the gardens and a desk that looked like it belonged to someone who negotiated empires. The fireplace was lit, but the warmth didn't reach his face. "I'm told you're the new caregiver," he said without standing. Brenda stayed near the door. "Yes, Mr. Marlowe. The twins have a schedule. Therapy, rest periods, quiet hours." His voice was controlled, almost mechanical. "They are not to be overstimulated." Brenda nodded once. "I've read the schedule." Ethan finally looked at her, really looked. "And you've read about the review?" "I have." "Then you understand what's at stake." Brenda took a breath. "I understand 2 children are being measured like a performance report." A flicker crossed Ethan's eyes. Anger, fear, something sharp. "This is not a debate." Brenda's voice stayed calm. "No, it's a life." Silence stretched. Ethan leaned back, fingertips pressed together. "Do your job. Don't make this harder." Brenda didn't smile. She didn't argue. She simply said, "I intend to make it truer." That evening, I watched from the hallway as Brenda approached the twins' playroom for the first time. Noah sat at a small table, sketchbook open, drawing the same shape over and over, an arched doorway. Lucas bounced on a beanbag, humming to himself, occasionally peeking toward the hall like he was waiting for someone to choose him. Brenda didn't rush in. She knelt outside the doorway first, letting her presence announce itself without forcing entry. Lucas spotted her. His eyes widened. "New person?" Brenda smiled softly. "New person." Lucas darted forward, stopped 2 feet away, and tilted his head. "You stay." Brenda put one hand on her chest, then extended it toward him, palm open. "If you'll let me." Lucas looked at her hand like it was a promise he wasn't sure he deserved. Then he placed his palm against hers, quick and warm. Noah didn't look up, but his pencil paused. Brenda turned slightly toward him, careful, respectful. "Hi, Noah. I'm Brenda." Noah's gaze lifted just enough to see her face, then dropped back to his drawing. He drew one more line, then pushed the sketchbook toward her, just an inch, as if testing whether she understood the language of small movements. Brenda leaned closer. "That's a doorway." Noah's eyes flicked up, surprised. Brenda added quietly, "Doorways mean something is on the other side." Noah's shoulders loosened, almost imperceptibly. In the hallway behind me, Ethan watched too. He didn't step in. He didn't speak. But his eyes followed every gesture like his heart was trying to remember how to be a heart. Over the next days, Brenda didn't break rules loudly. She broke them gently. She opened curtains in the morning, letting pale sunlight land on the carpet like it belonged there. She brought the twins breakfast to the art table instead of insisting they sit formally. She turned therapy exercises into games without mocking them, without babying them, just translating tasks into joy. Lucas, who had been clingy with staff but cautious with strangers, started tugging Brenda's sleeve to show her everything. A toy dinosaur, a picture of the garden, the way the hallway echoed if you stomped twice. Noah began leaving small paper folds on Brenda's chair, little cranes and stars, each one like a quiet yes. And Brenda created a ritual. She called it 3 taps, palm to palm, then 3 gentle taps with the thumb. It was simple. It was private. It meant, "I'm here. You're safe. We're a team." Lucas adored it. Noah studied it, then adopted it like it had always been his. The mansion, for the first time, began to sound like something other than footsteps and whispers. But the trust didn't care about sound. They cared about documentation. On day 5, a woman named Judith Klein arrived, trust liaison, impeccably dressed, polite as a blade. She toured the twins' wing with a clipboard and a smile that never reached her eyes. Behind her, an evaluator from a child welfare consultancy watched everything with quiet calculation. Ethan stood stiff beside them, nodding at every question like he was trying to pass an exam. Brenda stayed in the background until Judith noticed her. "And you are?" Judith asked. "Brenda Anderson, caregiver." Judith's eyes flicked to Brenda's hands, then to the twins. Lucas had leaned into Brenda's side. Noah's fingers held the edge of Brenda's sleeve like it was an anchor. Judith's smile sharpened. "Attachment forms quickly here." Brenda's voice stayed mild. "Children attached to safety." Judith's pen scratched something down. "We prefer stability." Brenda met her gaze. "Stability without love is just a locked room." Judith's eyelids lowered. "Be careful, Miss Anderson." That warning hung in the air long after they left. That night, Ethan sat alone in his office, staring at a framed photo on his desk. Elena in the garden, her hand on her stomach, laughing at something off camera. I saw him pick it up, grip it too tightly, then set it down as if it burned. He whispered, so softly I almost didn't hear it. "What do I do now, Elena?" Down the hall, in the twins' wing, Brenda sat on the floor with Noah and Lucas, folding paper cranes. Lucas giggled each time one turned out crooked. Noah's hands moved slowly, carefully, making sharp creases like precision was a kind of comfort. Brenda murmured, "When you can't control the storm, you build a shelter." Lucas looked up. "Shelter is hug?" Brenda smiled. "Shelter can be a hug." Noah slid a finished crane toward her. On its wing he had drawn a tiny doorway. Brenda's eyes softened. A doorway again. Noah tapped his thumb 3 times against her palm. 3 taps. And in that moment, I felt the mansion shift, like a giant house holding its breath had finally exhaled. Because what Ethan didn't know yet was that behind the dining room door he had sealed, Elena had left something waiting. And Brenda, with nothing but patience and faith, was about to find the key. The last thing Brenda said that night as she turned off the lamp in the playroom was barely louder than a prayer. "God, don't let love arrive too late." And the mansion answered with a quiet click, somewhere deep in its bones, like a lock beginning to loosen. Ethan had locked the dining room to keep grief out, but on the morning it opened, the truth inside would bring him to his knees. On day 6, the first clue arrived disguised as dust. Brenda was helping Mrs. Hargrove organize the linen closet at the end of the second-floor corridor, a narrow space that smelled like starch and lemon polish. Noah sat on the floor nearby, sketching silently. Lucas lay on his stomach, humming, pressing stickers onto a blank page, as if he were building a world one small circle at a time. Mrs. Hargrove reached up for an extra blanket and frowned. "That's odd." Brenda looked up. "What?" Mrs. Hargrove pointed to the top shelf. "There's a space where Elena kept the Sunday cloth, the embroidered one. It's been missing since the week she passed." Brenda's eyes narrowed slightly. "Maybe it's stored elsewhere." Mrs. Hargrove shook her head. "In this house nothing moves without Ethan knowing. Not after." Noah's pencil scratched faster. He drew an arch again, doorway, then added a tiny rectangle beside it like a handle. Brenda noticed. "Noah, is that a key?" Noah didn't answer with words. He tore the page out, folded it in half and slid it toward Brenda like he was delivering a message. Brenda opened the paper and felt her breath catch. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a map of the hallway. Rough, childlike, but specific. The twins' wing, the gallery corridor, and at the far end the dining room door marked with a bold circle. Next to it, Noah had drawn a small square, and inside that square, a tiny symbol like a flower. Lucas scooted closer, eyes bright. "Noah, no secret!" Mrs. Hargrove stiffened. "We don't have secrets in this house." Lucas grinned. "We do now." Brenda held the paper carefully, as if it might crumble. "Noah, where did you see this?" Noah's gaze drifted toward the portrait corridor, toward a section where Eleanor's portrait hung near the dining room entrance. It was a painting of her in pale blue, one hand resting on the back of Ethan's chair, her expression soft but knowing, like she was about to speak. Brenda stood slowly. "Okay," she said, voice low. "We're not going to do anything unsafe, but we can look." Mrs. Hargrove's face went pale. "Mr. Marlowe forbade that door." Brenda turned gently. "And the trust is trying to take his children. Sometimes a locked room isn't protection. Sometimes it's evidence." That sentence made Mrs. Hargrove swallow hard, because she knew it was true. Brenda didn't barge toward the dining room. She waited until the twins were calm, until their nurse was present in the wing, until everything was stable and safe. Then she took Noah's hand and Lucas's hand and walked them down the corridor like they belonged there, like the mansion was theirs, not the trust's. The portrait hallway was colder than the rest of the house. The air smelled like old varnish and winter stone. Noah stared at the frames like he was reading faces in a language only he understood. They stopped at Eleanor's portrait. Lucas lifted his chin. "Hi, Mom." Noah didn't speak. He reached toward the bottom of the frame and touched it, 2 fingertips reverent. Then he looked at Brenda and his eyes asked a question. "Do you see it too?" Brenda leaned closer. At the lower corner of the frame, carved into the ornate wood, was a small flower, stylized, almost hidden, the same symbol Noah had drawn. Brenda's pulse quickened. She ran her fingers along the carving, feeling for an irregularity. There, a tiny seam, almost invisible. She pressed gently. The corner of the frame shifted. Lucas gasped, delighted. "It's magic!" Mrs. Hargrove, watching from a few steps away, whispered, "Elena." Behind the frame corner, there was a narrow slot. Brenda slid 2 fingers inside and pulled out something wrapped in soft cloth, the Sunday cloth, and inside the folds of that embroidered fabric, a small brass key. Brenda stared at it, heat rushing up her neck. Noah didn't smile. He simply took Brenda's palm and tapped her thumb 3 times. 3 taps. Lucas bounced. Key, door!" Brenda's voice was firm but gentle. "We don't open doors without your dad. Not that door, not yet." Lucas's face fell, immediate and honest. "Why?" Brenda knelt so she was level with him. "Because your dad is scared. And when people are scared, they need love, not surprises." Noah watched her carefully. Then he reached out and pressed the key into her hand anyway, like he was saying, "Love sometimes is a surprise." That night, after the twins were asleep, Brenda sat alone in the small chapel room tucked near the library. It was one of the mansion's quietest spaces, just a wooden bench, a candle, and a stained glass window that turned moonlight into soft colors on the floor. Brenda held the key in both hands. She didn't pray like a performance. She prayed like someone who had lost too much to waste words. "God," she whispered, "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. But I know those boys need their father to come back to them." Her voice shook. "And I need this job to keep my promise at home." Because Brenda had a reason she hadn't shared with anyone in the mansion. A younger brother, Raphael, in a rehab facility after a car accident that had left him struggling to walk again. Bills stacking. Insurance denying coverage. Brenda working 2 jobs before this, sleeping in short, anxious bursts, carrying hope like a heavy bag. If she failed here, she didn't just lose a paycheck. She lost Raphael's physical therapy. She lost the one shot she had to keep her family afloat. And that pressure sat in her chest every time the trust's clipboard appeared. Flashback came to her then, uninvited. A cramped hospital corridor years ago, fluorescent lights humming, a little girl's laughter fading into silence. Brenda's niece Naomi not saved, not because Brenda didn't love her, but because love can't sign approvals or override bureaucracy. Brenda remembered holding Naomi's tiny hand and whispering promises she hadn't known how to keep. "I couldn't save you," Brenda whispered now in the chapel, tears slipping down her cheeks, "but I can show up for them." The candle flame trembled, like it hurt her. The next morning, Brenda approached Ethan in his office. He looked worse than before. Dark shadows under his eyes, jaw clenched so tightly it seemed to ache. Papers were spread across his desk, legal language, therapy reports, trust notices, the machine closing in. Brenda didn't start with the key. She started with truth. "Mr. Marlowe," she said, "may I ask you a question?" Ethan didn't look up. "Make it quick." Brenda's voice stayed steady. "When was the last time you sat in the same room with your sons for longer than 5 minutes? Ethan's eyes flicked up, sharp. "My schedule—" Brenda cut him off gently, not cruelly. "Your schedule is a fortress. But your sons don't need a fortress. They need a father." Ethan's mouth tightened. "You're overstepping." Brenda swallowed, because she knew the risk. The trust loved the word boundary, loved it like a weapon, but she kept going. "I'm not here to judge you. I'm here because those boys are being evaluated like a spreadsheet. They need you to be present, not perfect." Ethan stood abruptly, chair scraping. "You think I don't know that?" His voice cracked, the first real sound of him. Brenda softened. "Then let me help you do it." Ethan stared at her like her words were both an insult and a lifeline. How? Brenda reached into her pocket and placed the brass key on his desk. Quiet, reverent, as if it were a sacred thing. Ethan froze. His face drained of color. Where did you get that? Brenda didn't flinch. Noah found it. Ethan's hand hovered above the key, but didn't touch it. Like touching it would open something inside him he had sealed shut. That key, Ethan whispered, belongs to the dining room. Brenda nodded. Eleanor left it behind her portrait. She also left the Sunday cloth. Ethan's throat bobbed. His eyes glistened in a way he seemed furious about. You don't understand, he said, voice low. That room... Brenda's tone was gentle but firm. That room is a wound, and the trust is pointing at your wound and calling it neglect. Ethan's fingers curled into a fist. I locked it because every time I walked past it, I heard her laugh, and then I remembered she's gone. Brenda held his gaze. And every time you avoid it, your sons learn that love is something you run from when it hurts. Silence filled the office like water rising. Ethan looked away. His voice was smaller. They don't remember her like I do. Brenda shook her head. They do in their own way. They talk to her portrait. They draw doorways. They are carrying her in their bodies. Ethan's eyes snapped to hers. Doorways? Brenda placed Noah's map on the desk. Ethan stared at it. His breath hitched. He drew the dining room. Brenda nodded. He draws it every day. For a moment, Ethan looked like he might crumble right there, like a man realizing his child had been knocking on a door he didn't know existed. Ethan's voice came rough. They want to take them. Brenda answered softly. Yes. Ethan swallowed, blinked hard. And you think opening that room helps? Brenda leaned forward, voice low. I think your sons need to be seen as a family, not a case. And I think Elena left something there that can help you remember how. Ethan stared at the key like it was both a threat and a rescue rope. Then he said something I didn't expect a billionaire to admit, not out loud, not to someone like Brenda. I don't know how to go in there. Brenda didn't triumph. She didn't pity him. She simply said, then don't go in alone. That afternoon, Ethan walked the portrait corridor with Brenda and the twins. Mrs. Hargrove trailed behind, wringing her hands. Security kept a discreet distance. The mansion seemed to quiet, as if it understood the gravity of what was about to happen. They stopped at the dining room door. It was tall, dark wood, with brass handles polished to a shine no one had touched. Ethan's hand hovered near the keyhole. His fingers trembled. Lucas pressed against Brenda's side, whispering, Dad's scared. Noah reached up and tapped Ethan's wrist once, light, tentative. Not 3 taps, just one, like a gentle knock. Ethan closed his eyes, and for a second, I watched him fight something invisible. Then he slid the key into the lock. Click. The sound was small, but it echoed. Ethan pushed the door open, and what waited inside wasn't just a room, it was Elena, everywhere. Not as a ghost, as a presence. The sunlight poured in through high windows, illuminating dust motes like tiny floating prayers. The long table was still set the way Elena used to set it. A runner folded neatly, a vase in the center, the faint outline of where her hands had once placed plates. And on that table, dead center, sat 3 things that made Ethan's breath stop. A stack of envelopes tied with a ribbon the color of Elena's favorite dress, a small music box, and 2 child-sized aprons, one embroidered with Noah, the other with Lucas. Ethan stumbled forward 1 step, like the room pulled him. Lucas whispered, Mom's things. Noah's eyes filled. He didn't cry loudly. He simply stared, as if his heart recognized the space before his mind could. Ethan reached for the envelopes with shaking hands. The top one had his name, Ethan. His knees buckled. He didn't just sit. He fell, hard, onto the carpet in front of the table, hands clutching the letter like it was a lifeline. And for the first time since Elena's funeral, Ethan Marlowe wept. Not a single tear, not a dignified sniff. He wept like a man whose chest had been holding a scream for a year. Brenda didn't touch him. She didn't speak. She simply stood nearby, letting grief be honest. Lucas walked to Ethan and wrapped his arms around his father's neck. Daddy, stay. Noah knelt too, pressed his palm to Ethan's shoulder, then tapped 3 times with his thumb. 3 taps. I'm here. You're safe. We're a team. Ethan's voice broke open. I'm sorry, he choked. I'm so sorry. Then his gaze lifted to Brenda, raw, desperate. What is in those letters? He whispered. Brenda swallowed. Only one way to find out. Ethan tore the ribbon with trembling fingers and opened the first envelope. And the first line Elena had written was enough to turn the air in the room electric. Because it wasn't a love letter, it was a warning. Elena's first letter didn't say, "I miss you." It said, "They are coming for our boys, and you must not face them the way you face grief." Elena's handwriting looked like her voice sounded, elegant, soft, and impossible to ignore. Ethan sat on the floor of the dining room, letter shaking in his hands, Lucas clinging to his shoulder, Noah kneeling so close their knees touched. Brenda stood at the edge of the table like a witness. Ethan read aloud because he couldn't keep it inside. "Ethan," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means you finally opened the room you locked to survive me." Ethan's breath hitched. "The trust will call your grief a weakness," Eleanor had written. "They will use my absence as a reason to take our sons. They will say love is not enough. They will make you believe that money is the only proof of care. Don't let them." Ethan blinked hard, voice cracking. "Elena," Brenda watched his hands, how they trembled, not from fear of the trust, but from the terror of feeling again. Ethan continued, "You will be tempted to fight, like you always fight," Elena wrote, "with lawyers, with silence, with control. But our boys don't need a courtroom victory, they need you, fully, even messy." Lucas sniffled loudly. "Mom says you need you." Noah leaned forward and traced the edge of the letter with one finger, like he was reading it through touch. Ethan read the final lines, swallowing around a stone in his throat. "I left you tools," Eleanor wrote, "not to win, to return. In the music box, you will find the ritual. In the second envelope, you will find the truth the trust doesn't know. And in the third, you will find the words our sons will need when they are asked to prove they are a family." Ethan's eyes lifted to Brenda. "Words?" Brenda nodded slowly. "The trust wants measurable outcomes, but love needs language." Ethan's jaw clenched. "They're children," Brenda answered, quiet but firm. "They're people." Ethan stared down at the stack of envelopes, then at the music box. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside there was no jewelry. There was a folded piece of paper, another letter, and a small audio device the size of a deck of cards, old-fashioned but well cared for. Brenda leaned in. "What is that?" Ethan whispered. Eleanor's voice. Lucas gasped, eyes wide. "Mum voice." Noah froze completely, like his body didn't trust what his ears were about to receive. Ethan's finger hovered over the button. He looked terrified. Brenda's voice softened. "You don't have to do it now." Ethan swallowed. "Yes, I do." He pressed play. At first, there was a faint crackle. Then Elena's voice filled the dining room, warm, intimate, like she was leaning over the table with pancakes and laughter. "Hello, my loves," Elena said. "Noah, Lucas, if you're hearing me, it means you're brave. And your father is brave too, even if he forgets." Lucas made a sound between a laugh and a sob, and pressed both hands to his mouth. "Mom." Noah's eyes widened. His breathing changed, faster, shallow. He didn't melt down, he didn't run. He simply stared at the table as if the sound were too holy to meet directly. Elena continued, gentle. "This is our Sunday ritual, okay? When you feel lost, you do 3 taps, palm to palm, thumb tap, thumb tap, thumb tap. And you remember, you are not alone." Brenda's throat tightened. She glanced at Ethan, and for the first time I saw his pride crumble into something like awe. Elena's voice softened further. "Ethan, if you're listening to come back to them. Come back to me, not in grief but in love." The recording ended with a quiet hum, like a lullaby without words. The dining room stayed still. Lucas collapsed into Ethan's chest, sobbing openly. "I miss her." Ethan held him tighter than I'd seen him hold anyone, face buried in his son's shoulder. "I know," he whispered. "I know." Noah, still kneeling, reached out and placed his palm against Ethan's hand. 3 taps. Ethan looked down at his son like he was seeing him for the first time, not as a responsibility, not as a case file, but as a person who had been waiting at the door. Brenda spoke softly, careful. "There are more envelopes." Ethan's hands shook as he grabbed the second one. He opened it, and whatever he read there made his face drain of color all over again. His voice came out ragged. This can't be real." Brenda stepped closer. "What is it?" Ethan looked at her like he was about to confess a sin. Eleanor wrote about the trust, he whispered. About Judith Klein. About the clause. What clause? Brenda asked. Ethan swallowed hard. Eleanor changed the trust terms before she died. I felt my own stomach tighten. Money was never just money in families like this. It was power. A trust was a weapon dressed like protection. Ethan read aloud, voice shaking. If the trust attempts to remove the children from the surviving parent, Eleanor had written, they must prove harm. Emotional absence is not harm. Grief is not neglect. And if Ethan demonstrates consistent presence, documented by a neutral party, the trust loses the authority to override him. Brenda's eyes widened. A neutral party? Like me? Ethan stared at her. Elena named a care witness. Brenda felt the weight of it land on her shoulders. I didn't know. Ethan's jaw clenched. Judith knew. Brenda's voice went cold. That's why she warned me. Ethan slammed the letter onto the table, anger flaring like a match. They've been trying to build a narrative that I'm unfit. Brenda nodded, but she didn't let him stay in rage. Then we build something truer. Ethan's eyes burned. We don't have time. Brenda said, we have 8 days until the review. Lucas sniffed loudly. 8 days is big. Noah drew a small circle on the table with his fingertip, like a countdown. Brenda knelt beside the boys. Okay, she said gently. We will do what Elena asked. We will practice being a family in a way the trust can't dismiss. Ethan's voice broke. I don't know how. Brenda breathed in slowly, then said the simplest thing in the world, simple enough to terrify him. Show up. The next days became a new kind of schedule, not a perfect one, a human one. Ethan ate breakfast in the dining room with the twins, even when he barely touched his food. He sat at the long table under the chandelier Elena used to insist was too dramatic, and he listened to Lucas chatter about the garden and the echo in the hallway. He watched Noah draw doorways and begin, slowly, to draw people inside them. Brenda guided without taking over. She translated when the twins needed space. She reminded Ethan to pause when his voice got sharp. She created small rituals, the music box on Sunday morning, paper cranes hanging from a branch in the conservatory, 3 taps before hard moments. But the trust tightened too. Judith Klein returned with the evaluator and a lawyer named Marcus Vale, smooth, measured, the kind of man who used best interests like a scalpel. In the library, walls lined with books no one read, Marcus spoke politely while implying catastrophe. Mr. Marlowe, he said, we understand grief, but your sons require consistent emotional engagement. Their needs are specialized. Ethan's knuckles whitened on the armrest. They're my sons. Of course, Marcus said, smile faint. And the trust simply wants to ensure stability. A facility designed for their needs might provide. Lucas, sitting near Brenda, shook his head hard. No, no facility. Marcus's gaze flicked to Lucas, then returned to Ethan, as if Lucas were a detail rather than a person. Brenda felt her own pulse spike. Lucas is speaking. Marcus nodded slowly, patronizing. He's expressing discomfort. That's natural. Children resist change. Noah, quiet, took his sketchbook and held it up. On the page he had drawn the mansion. In the center was the dining room. In the dining room were 4 figures, 2 small, 1 tall, 1 medium. Above them, a simple word Noah had learned to write recently. Home. Brenda's voice stayed calm, but it carried steel. That is not discomfort. That is belonging. Judith's smile tightened. Miss Anderson, you're not qualified to interpret. Brenda cut in softly. I'm qualified to witness. That single word, witness, made Judith's eyes flash with something like fear, because Judith knew what Elena had written. After they left, Ethan paced the dining room like a caged animal. They're going to ruin you, Brenda said quietly. Ethan's laugh was humorless. I've been ruined. Brenda shook her head. No, you've been numb. Ethan stopped, staring at her. You don't know what it's like to wake up and remember she's gone. Brenda's chest tightened. Flashbacks surged. Naomi's hand, the hospital corridor, the paperwork, the denial letters. Brenda didn't flinch from Ethan's pain. She met it. I do know, she said softly. Not your exact grief, but grief that makes your lungs feel too small. Grief that turns love into a bruise. Ethan's voice dropped. Who did you lose? Brenda swallowed. My niece, Naomi. And the system taught me something cruel. Love isn't considered evidence unless someone writes it down. Ethan stared at her, and the anger in him shifted, moved from defense to recognition. That night, Brenda called her grandmother, a woman who spoke faith like it was a lamp you could carry. Brenda stood in the greenhouse, glass walls fogged with cold, the smell of damp soil and rosemary around her. She whispered into the phone, "I'm scared." Her grandmother's voice was warm, steady. "Then pray scared." Brenda's eyes stung. "I can't fail. My brother needs therapy. I need this job." "Baby," her grandmother said, "God doesn't ask you to be fearless. He asks you to be faithful." Brenda pressed her forehead to the glass. "What if the trust wins?" her grandmother answered. "Then you keep loving because love is not a transaction, and you let God handle what you can't." Brenda closed her eyes and whispered a prayer right there among the plants, asking for strength she didn't feel. When she returned to the twins' wing, Noah was awake, sitting on his bed, sketchbook open. He looked at her and tapped his thumb 3 times against his own palm, without touching her, like he was sending the ritual through the air. 3 taps. Brenda smiled through tears. "I'm here." Noah pushed his sketchbook toward her. He had drawn the dining room again, but this time the doorway was wide open, and light spilled out like a river. And in that light, Noah had drawn a small heart inside Ethan's chest. Brenda's throat tightened. "You see him coming back?" Noah's eyes shone. He whispered one word, soft, deliberate, like a seed dropped into soil. "Dad." It wasn't loud. It was everything. In the hallway, Ethan appeared, drawn by the sound. He froze, eyes wide, as if he wasn't sure he deserved it. Noah looked at him again and repeated, barely louder, "Dad." Ethan's face crumpled. He took 1 step forward, then stopped, terrified of breaking the moment. Brenda nodded gently, giving him permission without words. Ethan crossed the room and knelt beside Noah's bed. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. He pressed his forehead to Noah's hand and whispered, "I'm here." And Noah did 3 taps on Ethan's wrist like he had always known how. Outside the window, the mansion stood quiet and watching. Inside, love was becoming evidence, but the trust didn't rest. And the next letter Elena left, the 3rd envelope, was about to ignite a conflict that would put Brenda directly in the line of institutional fire. Noah's first clear dad should have been the victory, but Elena's 3rd letter was a match, and the trust was already reaching for gasoline. Elena's 3rd envelope was heavier than paper should be. Ethan carried it to the security office, not because the dining room wasn't sacred, but because he couldn't breathe under Elena's chandelier anymore. He needed walls that didn't hold memories. The security office sat near the service corridor. Monitors glowing, radios humming, the smell of coffee and metal. Chief Alvarez, head of security, stood respectfully aside as Ethan, Brenda, and I entered. Ethan's hand trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and a sealed packet labeled, "For the review. Read only when they try to silence the boys." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Silence them?" Brenda's voice was low. Elena knew. Ethan broke the seal and read. His face shifted from grief to fury to something like dread. "What is it?" Brenda asked. Ethan's voice came out sharp. "Elena wrote a statement for the boys." He read aloud, the words careful, protective, fierce. "If Noah cannot speak in the room," Elena had written, "let his drawings speak. If Lucas cries, let it be recorded as truth, not instability. Do not let them reduce my sons to compliance." Ethan swallowed hard. She prepared for them to be misunderstood. Brenda's eyes burned, because they always are. Ethan turned the page. Then his body went still. Brenda saw it and felt her stomach drop. Ethan's voice went hollow. Judith Klein was present when Eleanor signed these changes. Chief Alvarez frowned. "The liaison?" Ethan nodded slowly, eyes locked on the letter. Elena wrote, "Judith will pretend she protects you, but her loyalty is to the trust's image, not our children's humanity." Brenda exhaled, a cold understanding settling in. "That's why Judith keeps circling the twins like she's collecting proof." Ethan's hand clenched the paper until it crumpled. "She's not trying to help them. She's trying to control the narrative." And as if the mansion itself were eavesdropping, Chief Alvarez's radio crackled. "Chief, Judith Klein is at the gate with Marcus Vale. They're insisting on an unscheduled visit. They claim a compliance concern." Ethan's eyes flashed. "Concern about what?" The voice answered, "About Ms. Anderson." Brenda's breath caught. Ethan turned to her, disbelief sharpening into fear. "What did you do?" Brenda's voice stayed steady, but her heart hammered. "Nothing unsafe. Nothing illegal. I opened curtains. I moved meals to the dining room. I encouraged Ethan to be present." Ethan looked at the letter again, then at Brenda. His face tightened with realization. "They're going to make you the problem." Judith arrived minutes later, gliding into the security office like she owned the air. Marcus Vale followed, calm, smiling faintly. The evaluator stood behind them, silent. Judith's voice was smooth. "Mr. Marlowe, we've received reports that Ms. Anderson has been undermining your established care plan." Brenda's pulse pounded, but she didn't step back. "I've been supporting the twins' emotional stability and family connection." Marcus spoke gently, like he was offering mercy. "Ms. Anderson, we appreciate intention, but your role is not therapeutic oversight." Brenda met his gaze. "My role is care. Your role is control." Judith's smile tightened. "You've created inappropriate attachment." Lucas, who had followed quietly with a staff member and stood near the doorway, stepped forward, eyes blazing with childlike certainty. "Attachment is love." Judith glanced at Lucas, then dismissed him with her eyes. "Lucas, sweetheart, adults are talking." Brenda felt something flare inside her, hot and protective. "Don't shrink him." Judith's tone sharpened. "Excuse me." Brenda's voice stayed calm but firm. "He is not sweetheart in a courtroom tone. He is a person, and he is speaking." Noah appeared behind Lucas, holding his sketchbook to his chest like a shield. Marcus sighed, still polite. "This is exactly the issue. Ms. Anderson, you are escalating emotion." Ethan's fists clenched. He looked like he wanted to crush Marcus with money, with power, with anything that restored control. But the letter in his hand, Eleanor's voice, pulled him toward something else. Brenda spoke again, quieter. "This is what Elena warned about." Judith's eyes flicked to the envelope in Ethan's hand. "What is that?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "A letter from my wife." Judith smiled thinly. "Eleanor is not here, Mr. Marlowe. We have to operate in the present." And that sentence, "Eleanor is not here," hit Ethan like a slap. For a heartbeat, he looked ready to explode. Then he did something I had never seen a man like him do. He stepped forward and placed himself between Judith and Brenda, shielding her like she mattered more than his pride. "Don't," Ethan said quietly. Judith's brow lifted. "Don't what?" Ethan's voice grew steadier, colder. "Don't use my wife's death like a lever." Marcus's smile softened into warning. "Ethan, this is not personal. It's governance." Ethan laughed once, bitter. "Governance. That's what you call stealing children from a grieving father?" Judith's eyes narrowed. "Watch your language." Ethan turned to Brenda, voice lower. "They're going to try to discredit you." Brenda nodded, swallowing fear. "Then we document truth." Judith tapped her clipboard. "We are requesting Ms. Anderson's removal pending investigation, effective immediately." Lucas made a wounded sound. "No!" Noah's face tightened, breath shallow, panic rising. Brenda stepped back instinctively, hands open, grounding the twins without touching too tight. "Boys, look at me, breathe with me." 3 taps, thumb to palm, for each of them, anchoring. Judith snapped, "This is manipulation." Ethan's voice cut through, raw. "Enough." Judith lifted her chin. "You can refuse, but that will reflect in the review." Ethan stared at her, and I watched the war inside him. Money versus love, pride versus presence. Then he did something even more shocking. He didn't threaten, he didn't bargain. He asked. "Give me 1 hour," Ethan said. Marcus blinked. "For what?" Ethan's voice broke slightly. "To speak to my sons, without you interpreting it." Judith's gaze hardened. "This is not..." Ethan's voice rose, not loud, but unmistakable. 1 hour. Or you can explain to the judge why you ripped away the only consistent caregiver my sons have had in months." Judith's nostrils flared. Finally, she said, "Clipped. 1 hour." They stepped out to the hall. Ethan turned to Brenda, and for the first time the billionaire mask fell completely. His eyes shone, his voice was wrecked. "What if they take them?" Brenda swallowed. "Then we fight with truth." Ethan's breath shook. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Brenda's voice softened. "You don't have to be strong, you have to be here." Ethan looked at Noah and Lucas, 2 small bodies holding so much emotion, and then he did the power reversal the trust never expected. He sank to his knees in the security office, right there on the industrial carpet. and he grabbed Brenda's hand like he was drowning. "I need you," Ethan whispered, voice breaking. "I can't do this without you. Please, don't leave them. Don't leave me." Brenda's eyes filled instantly. She squeezed his hand. "I'm not leaving." Ethan bowed his head, tears dropping onto her knuckles. "I thought money could fix everything. I thought control was love." He looked up at her, utterly undone. "You showed me I was wrong." Brenda's voice trembled. "Then prove it. Show up the way Elena asked." Ethan nodded, tears still falling. And then the mansion itself tested them. A soft alarm beeped on the monitor wall. Chief Alvarez frowned. "Electrical alert in the service corridor near the records archive." Ethan stood abruptly, instinct snapping him into action. "The twins are safe?" Alvarez nodded. "Nurse has them in the playroom. Doors closed. Staff with them. Good. Safe." That mattered most. Brenda's eyes flicked toward the corridor. "Records archive. That's where old trust files are stored, right?" Alvarez nodded. "Yes." "Why?" Brenda thought of Elena's clause, of Judith's loyalty, of paper trails. If something happened to those records, the trust could rewrite reality. Ethan's jaw clenched. "We go, now." Alvarez hesitated. "Sir, protocol." Ethan snapped. "Protocol later." Brenda followed Ethan and Alvarez down the service corridor, narrower, colder, the walls less polished, the mansion's hidden ribs. A faint smell hit them, warm plastic, like something overheated. Alvarez opened a maintenance door a crack, peered in, then shut it quickly. "Small electrical smoke, not flames. We can cut the breaker." Ethan turned to Brenda. "Stay back." Brenda shook her head. "I'm staying with you." They moved fast. Adult fast, controlled, no chaos near children. Alvarez radioed for maintenance. Ethan located the breaker panel. Brenda grabbed a flashlight. The smoke was light, contained, more warning than disaster, but it was still a test of calm under pressure. Ethan's hands shook as he flipped switches, not from danger but from the sheer overload of everything happening at once. Brenda's voice cut through softly. "Breathe. You're here." Ethan exhaled, flipped the last switch. The alert stopped. Maintenance arrived within minutes, sealing the area, ventilating, ensuring safety. No one was harmed. The twins remained protected, supervised, nowhere near it. The mansion settled again, like a beast soothed. But the incident did something else. It snapped Ethan fully into fatherhood. When he returned to the playroom, Noah and Lucas were waiting. Lucas ran to him, arms wide. "Dad, you okay?" Ethan scooped him up carefully, holding him close. "I'm okay." Noah approached slower. Ethan knelt, bringing himself to Noah's level. "I'm here," Ethan whispered. Noah studied him, then lifted his hand. 3 taps. Ethan smiled through tears. 3 taps, he echoed. Judith and Marcus returned exactly at the hour. Judith's tone was crisp. "Decision, Mr. Marlowe?" Ethan's spine straightened. He looked at Brenda, then at his sons. "My decision," Ethan said, voice calm and unwavering, "is that Ms. Anderson remains. And if the trust challenges it, we'll present Elena's documents, Noah's work, Lucas's statements, and my presence as evidence." Judith's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You are gambling with your son's future." Ethan replied. "No, I'm finally choosing it." Marcus exhaled, expression cool. "Then we'll see you at the review." They left. The door shut. Silence returned. And in that silence, Brenda realized something terrifying. Judith wasn't done. Because institutional villains don't lose gracefully. They retaliate. And the next move would target the one person Ethan had finally allowed himself to need. The trust couldn't control Ethan anymore, so they decided to destroy Brenda before the review ever happened. The morning of the review arrived, with a sky the color of steel and a mansion holding its breath. The dining room was open now, curtains pulled back, sunlight invited in even through clouds. The long table held a simple breakfast, fruit, toast, and a small stack of pancakes Mrs. Hargrove had made because she'd finally stopped treating hope like a betrayal. Noah sat with his sketchbook. Lucas sat with syrup on his chin, grinning like life was a dare he intended to win. Ethan sat at the head of the table, not because he wanted power, but because he wanted to be seen, present, steady, human. Brenda stood near the doorway, adjusting Lucas's collar, smoothing Noah's sleeve, offering quiet reassurance without turning them into a performance. Then Chief Alvarez entered, face tight. "Mr. Marlowe," he said carefully, Judith Klein filed an emergency complaint last night. Allegations of misconduct by Ms. Anderson. They're requesting her removal before the hearing. The room went cold. Lucas froze, syrup spoon mid-air. Remove. Brenda? Noah's pencil snapped. Ethan stood so fast his chair scraped. What allegations? Alvarez hesitated. They're implying she's emotionally manipulating the twins to influence legal outcomes. Brenda's stomach dropped. She'd known retaliation was coming. Knowing didn't make it easier to breathe through. Ethan's eyes burned. That's a lie. Alvarez nodded. I agree. We have security footage, staff logs, witness statements. But the trust is pushing hard. Brenda swallowed, voice steady despite the quake inside her. If they pull me, Noah and Lucas will spiral. That will look like evidence. Ethan's jaw tightened. He turned toward Brenda like his entire world had narrowed to one choice. Protect the sons, protect the truth. Brenda spoke softly. Ethan, listen. You cannot fight this with rage. You fight with presence. Ethan's throat worked. What do we do? Brenda lifted Noah's sketchbook gently. We bring them what they can't argue with. At the private hearing room, sterile, neutral, designed to make feelings feel inappropriate, Judith sat beside Marcus Vale. The evaluator sat with a tablet. A judge-like arbitrator presided, calm and distant, as if human lives were policy. Ethan sat with Brenda and Chief Alvarez behind them. Noah and Lucas sat close to Brenda, not clinging, just anchored. Lucas held a paper crane. Noah held his sketchbook like it was his voice. Judith spoke first, smooth as ever. We believe Ms. Anderson has compromised the children's emotional stability by fostering dependence and undermining professional boundaries. Marcus added, the trust's obligation is to protect the minors from undue influence. Brenda felt her pulse hammer, but she kept her face calm. Ethan's hands tightened, but he didn't explode. He breathed. He showed up. When it was his turn, Ethan stood. He didn't lead with money, he didn't lead with anger, he led with confession. I failed, Ethan said, voice rough. After my wife died, I locked rooms. I locked myself. I thought providing was enough. It wasn't. Judith's lips twitched, almost triumphant. Ethan continued anyway. My sons needed me, and I wasn't there the way they deserved, and the trust used that gap as a reason to take them. Marcus leaned forward. Mr. Marlowe, no one is taking them. We are proposing a stable. Ethan cut him off, calm but firm. You are proposing control, not care. He turned to the arbitrator. Ms. Anderson did not manipulate my sons. She helped me return to them. And my wife left instructions, legal and personal, anticipating this exact attempt. Judith's eyes narrowed. Eleanor is deceased. Her wishes are not governance. Ethan's gaze sharpened. Her documents are. Chief Alvarez handed over copies of Elena's letters, the trust clause and the designation of a neutral witness. The arbitrator read, expression shifting slightly, interest perhaps, where there had been none. Judith's composure tightened. Those documents could be interpreted. Brenda spoke for the first time, quiet but clear. They can be verified. Marcus turned to her with polite disdain. Ms. Anderson, you are not counsel. Brenda met his gaze. No, I'm witness. The arbitrator looked at Noah and Lucas. The children's perspective matters within developmental limits. Judith's smile returned. Precisely. Their limitations. Brenda's voice cut in, still gentle, but firm enough to stop the sentence. They are not limitations. They are differences, and their truth is still truth. Lucas raised his hand suddenly like a student who refused to be erased. I talk. The arbitrator nodded. You can speak. Lucas stood, small but determined. He looked at Ethan, then at Judith, then back at the arbitrator. They say Dad not here, Lucas said, words imperfect but fierce. Dad was like a statue, money statue. A quiet ripple moved through the room. Lucas's eyes filled. Brenda made sun. Brenda made windows open. Dad came back. Judith's smile stiffened. Lucas, you feel attached. That's normal, but it doesn't prove... Lucas shook his head hard, tears spilling. It proves love. Then he turned to Ethan and said the line that hit like a bell. If Mum can't come back, can you at least stay? Ethan's face crumpled. He stepped forward instinctively, then stopped, respecting the room, letting Lucas have his voice. Ethan whispered, I will. Noah didn't speak yet. He held up his sketchbook. Brenda moved carefully, placing the sketchbook on the table before the arbitrator. Page after page showed the same transformation. Doorways closed, then cracking open, then wide. A dining room drawn dark and empty, then bright with 4 figures at the table. A heart drawn outside Ethan's chest, then inside. And finally 1 page. 4 hands together. 2 small, 1 large, 1 medium, thumb tapping 3 times. The arbitrator studied it a long moment. This is consistent communication. Judith's voice sharpened. Art is subjective, Brenda replied softly. So is love, but that doesn't make it false. The arbitrator looked at Noah gently. Noah, do you want to say anything? Noah's breath changed. His fingers tightened on the edge of his chair. Brenda leaned slightly, not forcing, just offering presence. Ethan knelt beside Noah's chair, right there in the hearing room, bringing himself down, refusing to tower over his child. Ethan whispered, "It's okay. I'm here." Noah stared at him. Then Noah reached out and placed his palm against Ethan's cheek. 3 taps. The room went utterly still. Noah's lips parted. His voice came out soft, careful, like walking across thin ice. "Dad, you look at walls, not us." Ethan shut his eyes, tears spilling. He didn't wipe them. He let the room see the truth. "I'm sorry," Ethan whispered. "I'm looking now." The arbitrator's expression shifted, something human finally breaking through policy. "Thank you," they said quietly. Judith tried one last angle. The trust's concern is long-term stability. Mr. Marlowe's grief may return. Ms. Anderson may leave. This is unsustainable. Brenda felt the knife twist. Because yes, she might have to leave. Raphael needed her. Life didn't pause for the Marlowe family's healing. But Ethan unbelievably addressed it before she could. He stood and turned toward the arbitrator. "Ms. Anderson has her own responsibilities. I don't own her. I'm grateful for her." Then he turned toward Brenda in front of everyone. And he did it again, the thing the trust couldn't understand. He humbled himself. Ethan stepped closer, voice thick. "Brenda, I need you to hear this from me, not as an employer." He took a breath and then he lowered himself, kneeling, eyes shining. "I begged you in private," Ethan said. "I'll honor you in public. You restored my son's light. You restored my faith that I can be their father. Whatever happens today, I will never forget your worth." Brenda's throat tightened so hard she could barely breathe. Tears fell before she could stop them. The arbitrator watched, stunned. Judith's mouth tightened into a thin line. Ethan looked up at Brenda. "And if you have to leave because your family needs you, then I will help your family the way you helped mine." Brenda whispered, broken. "Ethan." Ethan stood, turning back to the room. "That is my commitment. Presence, not image." The arbitrator cleared their throat. "Based on the documented trust clause, witness statements, and observed family connection, the trust's petition to override guardianship is denied." Judith's face hardened. Marcus's smile vanished. Ethan's shoulders dropped, not in triumph but in relief so profound it looked like collapse. Lucas let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "We stay." Noah didn't cheer. He simply leaned into Ethan's side, quiet and complete. After the hearing back at the mansion, Ethan brought Brenda to the dining room. Sunlight spilled across the table. The music box sat open. Ethan placed a folder on the table, documents, approvals, checks, not as a bribe, as a bridge. "This," Ethan said, voice steady, "is the funding for Raphael's rehabilitation, not because you earned it, because you are family to us now." Brenda's knees nearly gave out. "Ethan, Ethan shook his head. "You gave my sons a shelter. Let me give yours one too." Brenda covered her mouth, crying. "Thank you." Ethan's eyes glistened. "Thank you." Lucas burst into the room, arms wide. "Group hug." Noah followed, holding a small object, a paper crane, but this one had a heart drawn on its wing. Noah handed it to Ethan. Ethan took it carefully. "For me?" Noah nodded once. Then Noah stepped closer, rested his head against Ethan's chest, listening. Ethan froze, confused. Noah lifted his face, eyes shining with a calm certainty that cut through everything. "Dad," Noah whispered, "I can hear your heart." Ethan's breath broke. He pulled Noah and Lucas into his arms, holding them like he was holding life itself. Brenda stood close, palm open. Lucas grabbed it and pressed it against Ethan's hand, 4 hands together. 3 taps, 3 taps, 3 taps. And the mansion, This massive house of locked rooms and old money felt for the first time like a home that belonged to the living. Later that night, the dining room table held a simple dinner. No performance, no fear, just presence. Ethan looked at the empty chair where Elena used to sit, and instead of collapsing, he smiled softly. "We did it," he whispered to the air. "Not a victory over death, a victory over numbness." I left the Marlowe mansion with one image burned into my mind. A billionaire who learned that the strongest thing he could ever do wasn't to win. It was to stay. And before this story ends, I want to leave you with the question it left me. When grief or fear makes you lock a part of your heart, who is standing outside that door, waiting for you to open it? If this story moved you, share your answer in the comments. Who do you need to come back to, or who do you wish would come back to you? And if you want more emotional stories like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you're watching from, because sometimes the first step toward healing is realizing you're not alone. The trust wanted custody, but what Ethan fought for wasn't a legal win. It was the right to love his sons out loud.